Guys, ngayon ibablog ko kung paano nagsimula ang NCOB at nakakalungkot kasi ngayon sa Pilipinas, halos wala na mabilang alcohol, mas may mabilhan man. Siyempre, bilang Pinoy, yung iba binibenta ng doble, yung sobrang taas na ng presyo. Pero kung tutuusin, hindi dapat ganun na magbebenta ka ng dobleng presyo para lang sa ikikita ng paninda mo. Kasi sa totoo ngayon dapat lahat tayo nagtutulungan para sa sakit na yon, sa virus na yon, para maagapan siya. Hindi dapat na magpapanic buying ka tapos ibebenta mo na mas dobleng presyo. Kawawa naman yung ibang mahihirap na hindi maka-afford. At ang isa pa, napag-isipan ko sana na bumili dito sa Saudi. Kaso, wala na rin, kahapon lang. Halos wala na rin mabilhan kasi nga, kalat na siya. At sana, ipagdasal pa rin natin na matapos na tong sakit na to. At bumalik na lahat sa dati.
When health officials in China admitted they had a problem.
Health authorities have activated their most serious response level
after an outbreak of a new type of viral pneumonia
in central China.
A rapidly growing number of people were developing a dry cough and fever before getting pneumonia. And for some, it turned fatal. Doctors have named the disease COVID-19, or coronavirus disease 2019, indicating that a type of virus is causing the illness. When they tried to trace its origin, they found a likely source: this food market in Wuhan. Out of the first 41 patients, 27 had been here. It wasn't conclusive evidence, but Chinese officials quickly shut down the market. They had seen this happen before at a place just like this.
Health officials are trying to get a grip on an alarming outbreak of SARS.
The virus originated in mainland China.
Has spread across the country.
The disease had been festering for months in southern China.
In 2002, a coronavirus had emerged at a very similar market in southern China. It eventually reached 29 countries and killed nearly 800 people. Now, 18 years later, this coronavirus is in at least 71 countries and has already killed over 3,100 people. So what do these markets have to do with the coronavirus outbreak, and why is it happening in China? A lot of the viruses that make us sick actually originate in animals. Some of the viruses that cause the flu come from birds and pigs. HIV/AIDS comes from chimpanzees. The deadly Ebola virus likely originates in bats. And in the case of the 2019 coronavirus, there's some evidence it went from a bat to a pangolin before infecting a human. While viruses are very good at jumping between species, it's rare for a deadly one to make this journey all the way to humans. That's because it would need all these hosts to encounter each other at some point. That's where the Wuhan market comes in. It's a wet market. A kind of place where live animals are slaughtered and sold for consumption.
It was not a surprise at all, and I think that it was not a surprise to many scientists.
Peter Lee is a professor and expert on China's animal trade.
The cages stacked above one over another. Animals at the bottom are often soaked with all kinds of liquid, animal excrement, pus, blood, or whatever the liquid they're receiving from the animals above.
That's exactly how a virus can jump from one animal to another. If that animal then comes in contact with or is consumed by a human, the virus could potentially infect them. And if the virus then spreads to other humans, it causes an outbreak. Wet markets are scattered all over the world, but the ones in China are particularly well known because they offer a wide variety of animals, including wildlife. This is a sample menu reportedly from the market in Wuhan. These animals are from all over the world, and each one has the potential to carry its own viruses to the market. The reason all these animals are in the same market is because of a decision China's government made decades ago. Back in the 1970s, China was falling apart. Famine had killed more than 36 million people, and the communist regime, which controlled all food production, was failing to feed its more than 900 million people. In 1978, on the verge of collapse, the regime gave up this control and allowed private farming. While large companies increasingly dominated the production of popular foods like pork and poultry, some smaller farmers turned to catching and raising wild animals as a way to sustain themselves.
At the very beginning, it was mostly peasant household backyard operation of turtles, for example. That's how wildlife farming started to get off the ground.
And since it started to feed and sustain people, the Chinese government backed it.
So it was imperative for the government to encourage people to make a living through whatever productive activities they can find themselves in. You can lift yourself out of poverty. No matter what you are doing, that's okay.
But then in 1988, the government made a decision that changed the shape of wildlife trade in China. They enacted the Wildlife Protection Law, which designated the animals as resources owned by the state and protected people engaged in the utilization of wildlife resources.
That's one of the most devastating problems of the law, because if you designate the wildlife as a natural resource, that means it is something you can use for human benefits.
The law also encouraged the domestication and breeding of wildlife. And with that, an industry was born. Small local farms turned into industrial-sized operations. For example, this bear farm started with just 3 and eventually grew to more than 1,000 bears. Bigger populations meant greater chances that a sick animal could spread disease. Farmers were also raising a wide variety of animals, which meant more viruses on the farms. Nonetheless, these animals were funneled into the wet markets for profit. While this legal wildlife farming industry started booming, it simultaneously provided cover for an illegal wildlife industry. Endangered animals like tigers, rhinoceroses, and pangolins were trafficked into China. By the early 2000s, these markets were teeming with wild animals when the inevitable happened.
The latest on the deadly SARS virus, the worldwide death toll up again today.
China has reported more than 1,400 cases.
So yun guys, kailangan nating mag-ingat at laging kung yung may mga extra kayong mga damit na hindi na ginagamit, pwede nyo yung tahiin, gawing mask. At yung sa alcohol, kung hindi alcohol man, mag-safeguard lagi lahat ng mga sabon na may 100% na panglaban sa mga germs or virus, ganyan. Kasi sa totoo lang, wala na kahit ni sanitizer sa mga pharmacy, sa mga grocery stores, kahit saan. So yun lang ang pwede natin gawin. Huwag na maglalabas hanggat maaari. Huwag na muna magpupunta kung saan-saan, lalo sa mga delikadong lugar na na mas mabilis dumami ang sakit. Laging dobling ingat, maghugas ng kamay. At pag makikipag-usap hanggat maaari, kung kahit kakilala pa natin, magtakap ng bibig, mag-mask, lahat na ng proteksyon para lang huwag tayo magkasakit, huwag magkasakit yung pamilya natin.